Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. We're sitting here talking about what is going on in the world of professional wrestling. Yesterday, I was listening to the Wrestling Observer radio. It was hosted by some weird guy filling in for Brian Alvarez. I never really got the word where Brian was doing the show with Dave Meltzer, and basically they were doing the Q&A at the end of the show. I think some people more than likely saw this headline pop up on a lot of the dirt sheets who take things that Meltzer says and tend to sort of work their way around the words that he says when he's answering these questions. And it just basically, the question straight up was, if WWE offered Stone Cold Steve Austin $10 million, would he come back for one more match at Wrestlemania? I honestly thought that was a pretty far-off question. I know that the number is out there that Brock Lesnar makes about $10 million a year wrestling for WWE, but this is for him doing, sporadic pay-per-views throughout the year. I think Brock works his schedule of working at least 5 or maybe 4 pay-per-views, and it seems like he works about 5 or 6 house shows throughout the year. He does some Monday Night Raw appearances. He sells a bunch of t-shirts. He does things like that, and that's how they come to about $10 million. I know that the answer is out there that, with the Fox deal, with the USA deal, that WWE makes a shitload of money. They make more money than they made in the past, and they made a lot of money before. So $10 million on the books is going to be a lot of money, but WWE can't afford $10 million to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Let's get this right out of the gate. My answer to this is that if Vince McMahon calls up Stone Cold Steve Austin, "Hey, Steve, you want to make $10 million? There's no way in the world that Stone Cold Steve Austin is not getting ready for that. I know that a lot of people who listened to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast back in the day, around the time of WrestleMania 32, I honestly really thought that Stone Cold Steve Austin was coming back to wrestle a real match. He was talking a lot about getting in shape. He was talking a lot about the wrestling business and what was going on. I really thought he was going to come back, maybe not do the match with Brock Lesnar, but have a match with somebody. He ended up coming back, and he ended up doing the thing with the League of Nations, with Wade Barrett, Sheamus, Rusev, and Alberto Del Rio, I believe. When it was him, Mick Foley, and Shawn Michaels came down. He gave some stunners out. There was some sweet chin music. Mankind put on the mandible claw. I really thought that he was going to do a real match. I know that he's talked about in his podcast in the past that if he wanted to come back, he would need 6 months of committed time in the gym, of working out, to get to the point where he thought he would be WWE ready to come back, even if that is just for some Monday Night Raws and a match at WrestleMania. You got to think that Stone Cold Steve Austin really does not want to let that legacy down of what was in the past. It's been WrestleMania 19 was a long time ago, and I know that he was going to come back and do that match against Jonathan Coachman, I believe at a Cyber Sunday or a Taboo Tuesday, but then once the word was out that he was actually going to lose the match due to a returning Mark Henry, all of a sudden he wasn't ready. He didn't think it was good for him to come back and wrestle that. So I know that Stone Cold Steve Austin really does think he's one of the greatest that's out there. I know he's come to a point now where he will put over The Rock. He will put over Hulk Hogan. He doesn't have to go out down saying that he is the number one guy in the history of the business. He doesn't mind being in that top 4, top 5 discussion. He'll tip his hat to both of those guys and say that they were bigger than he was. And he definitely does get to points where he puts himself over. I think that honestly, if $10 million is the question, $10 million is the question, Stone Cold Steve Austin comes back and he wrestles one match. Now we get to the point of answering the question of, if Stone Cold Steve Austin did come back, who is he going to wrestle? Obviously, the biggest match that people have been asking for, one of them is Brock Lesnar. The other one is CM Punk. The CM Punk match is not able to happen because I think that honestly, even if Vince McMahon calls up CM Punk and offers him $10 million for one match against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, CM Punk turns it down. The match against Brock Lesnar. That is possibly the one match that maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin says, I don't think I can do it. even for $10 million. Because of the fact that the kind of match that Brock wrestles at this point is basically, just throwing people around, just giving them German suplexes from one end of the ring to the other. Stone Cold Steve Austin to be taking some awful, hellish bumps, landing mostly on that neck made out of a stack of dimes over and over and over again, and I don't think it's going to hold up. And I think that, even though Stone Cold Steve Austin would have $10 million in the bank, I don't think he's going to be wanting to go in and get that neck checked out again. I think that if he does wrestle a match, it has to be a different style of match that, he doesn't have to do as much to basically go out and get it. To that point, I point the finger at Triple H. Triple H would possibly be the biggest option that there is out there every year that there's a returning superstar at WrestleMania, whether if it's Kurt Angle, whether if it's Sting, people that have had a little bit of time out of the business. Triple H is always the guy to step up because they know because of his place in the authority, the storyline is always going to make sense. That basically Triple H doesn't want this person involved in WWE, but because of the love of wrestling and because of the love of the fans want to see this match, that the person gets brought in and that then the match is basically going to happen. So the storyline is always going to make sense. Triple H, you think of the match with Sting, which basically turned into the Monday Night Wars, played out at WrestleMania, WCW against WWE, the NWO against DX. So many storylines played out in that when you watch that match, if you were to subtract the run-ins and everything that happened, the match is really nothing. Really nothing happened in that match. I'm really surprised that they let Sting even come back and have another match against Seth Rollins for the championship because of the fact that they didn't really trust him to do anything at WrestleMania, and all of a sudden here we come to the summer, and maybe they just realized how big of a storyline he was to WrestleMania 31. I remember getting to Santa Clara, and that was the only thing people wanted to talk about. Triple H versus Sting was the must-see match of that week. And then as the word came out that Brock Lesnar had re-signed for WWE, people were sort of talking about that Roman versus Brock match. But most people thought it was a slam dunk that Roman was going to beat Brock anyways and take the title. That's all they were really saying. But Triple H versus Stone Cold Steve Austin makes sense. It plays off of everything from the Attitude Era. It'd have to go into that whole end of the era kind of thing with Undertaker and Triple H from WrestleMania 28, where you basically say this is the last time two guys from this era are going to be going out there and doing battle. But it really would make sense. Stone Cold Steve Austin could just come back and just basically say that Triple H and Stephanie are ruining the product. They're ruining Monday Night Raw. This is a show that he used to really love. And, when he left professional wrestling, it was at a current state that it is not at today. And that could be basically the storyline of the match. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to want to see want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. One more time, even though they've seen it 3 times at WrestleMania, seen it one more time would be sort of the bookend of both of these guys' careers. But at that point, you got to be thinking how much money WWE really wants to spend on one match for WrestleMania. If obviously you're offering Stone Cold Steve Austin $10 million for one more match, you got to be offering The Rock $10 million for that match as well. And one match having a payoff of $20 million at WrestleMania seems like a lot of money, to the point where you just have to say that this match is not going to happen, and it's just unfeasible to put that much money on the table for one match. Maybe if they found some way to book it as its own pay-per-view, a lot like a boxing event, like Mayweather versus anybody. I guess Mayweather versus McGregor was the last fight, or Mayweather versus Pacquiao or anything like that. Maybe WWE can make something out of that, where you sort of like show a documentary, maybe have a couple of small matches that play into it, and then you just really have the match. Austin versus Rock, one more time, the war to settle the score if you want to take that, and just do that. Maybe that makes sense, but even that, for one pay-per-view, to have a gate as well as have the pay-per-view buys, well, you don't even really have pay-per-view buys anymore because you have the network, and equal $20 million, as well as having to worry about how much money you're paying for the arena, and then all those other. It doesn't make sense. That even doesn't make sense. I was even on the edge of my seat, like maybe this could work, but to pay $20 million to two guys just doesn't work. So I want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin return as much as the other guy, but when you're thinking his last match was at WrestleMania 19, here we are rolling into WrestleMania 35. That's a long time. I don't think it's ever going to happen.